Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. I am once again joined by a special guest, this time by returning friend of the show, Kelly Thompson. Hello, Kelly. Thank you for joining us again. Well,
Hi,
me again.
Phil. Hi, Phil. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, it's always great talking to you, of course. I told you you're always welcome. All right, so before we get to the Captain Marvel stuff, because that's what everyone wanted to talk about, all the people.
Uh-oh.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But no, I just wanted to give you a shout out. I on a recommendation I picked up. Well, I'm sure I know it's I think it's ongoing digitally, but I'm an old man, so I picked up in paper. It's Jeff number one, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I think they did a really good job with the print edition, and I was super excited to get the print edition out there because listen, I fucking love comics. I like digital because it creates a lot of options for people who maybe don't have options, but I also know um, it's that's rough for comic shops and people who would really rather read things in print. I totally get that. I'm a collector too. Um, I think the hard thing with translating it to print, and I'm sorry I don't know the names of the people at Marvel that specifically did the layouts for the print, but they really put a lot of work in it because I think it reads quite well, despite the fact that the digital is very geared towards scrolling panel layout. And we had a moment at the very beginning when we were starting where we were like, do we want to lean into this format and like do some of the cool things that will be really great about it? Like there's in the swimming story, which was our first story that went up. There's this long panel of him swimming and seeing legs and everything. And like it still works in print, but it just is more fun and you get the effect better in digital. And we but we really talked about that. We're like, listen, we're making it for this format and we should lean into that and do whatever we can with it. And if it doesn't translate great to print, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I think it was a lot of work for the production people to get it right. I think it's one of the reasons that Jeff was a little slow to release into this edition was because they really had to put a lot of design work in to make it the best version it could be that comes as close as it can to replicating, what the Marvel Unlimited Jeff is. And I think they did a really great job. I will say for people who don't have Marvel Unlimited and picked up its Jeff but still picked it up digitally like through Comixology, I highly recommend reading it in panel view, which I do not usually recommend because as a writer, I don't like to lose the page layout, I don't like to see single panels, but I do think there are certain scenarios in which it works much better. And I think it's Jeff is a great example because it's a much closer replication of the Marvel Unlimited scrolling effect to read it panel view. So just a hot tip from your favorite little writer.
Well, and the best part is it did come with the free digital code. So I mean, you could
Oh
read it.
yeah.
You could read it both ways and compare and
Yeah.
contrast. Yes. So
Yeah. That's great. I always forget about those.
so yeah. So is that like another step as a modern creator you have to think about, like, is like when you're talking with whoever your artist is or whatever book you're working on, that like, oh yeah, this is probably going to be this is going to be in digital eventually, so is
Yeah.
that always on your mind anymore?
It is. It is. It's really on my mind. A similar but different example is Mattia De Ulias, my collaborator on Jessica Jones for Marvel. We did that together, and he's doing The Cull with me.
Mm,
It's a creator-owned book, and It'll release digitally on Substack. It'll also be on Comixology, but it'll be on my Substack, and it'll also be in print from Image in August. It's going to
oh,
start. It looks like. And we had that the first issue of that is particularly dark because it basically begins with five teens sort of sneaking out of their homes at 3 in the morning. And so it's, very dark. And Madia has a really beautiful, highly realistic style. And when I wrote the script, I said to him, I was like, listen, you got to tell me what you think here because I'm worried you know, I didn't want there to be like a big bright moon and stuff because there's some like stuff with the tides in the book and everything. It sounds overly complicated, but I was like, I deliberately wrote it without this big bright moon. I was like, but I think it's going to be a problem. Like, is it just going to be black on black on black? And he was like, no, we can figure it out. You know, he's so smart and such a great collaborator. And what he ended up doing was he did a version for Substack and a version for Image because we don't want it to print too dark. Like, it will definitely be dark. It's night. But, you know, he's so good with color and light. I think it ends up being incredible. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at all these things. I think it's less clear cut in the case of the Cull, but in the case of Jeff, like, I really just think we made the right decision. Like, you got to lean into what you're in. Otherwise, I just feel like you're someone writing a comic who hopes it's going to become a movie. And I don't like have a lot of respect for that. I mean, not that I have any problem with adaptation, but I just don't think you should go into comics as a backdoor with your project to try to turn it into something else. Let it be comics. Comics are beautiful. Like, let it live in that form the best way it can, you know?
I mean, just the whole It's Jeff issue. I mean, I could see them doing an animated thing with this. I mean, it's parent company Disney. You have to like, I have like 3-4 different Disney channels in there. I mean,
yeah, I think that I suspect all of that is in the future for Jeff. I think he's a breakout character. I hope I will be involved with some of that stuff. Certainly Marvel has so far been very I don't want to say kind because that seems like the wrong word, but they've been very inclusive about keeping me involved in stuff he's up to. I'm even writing this little Venomverse short that he's in that Gurihiru will draw. You know, so they've been great in that regard. I would be shocked if there isn't a Groot-esque Jeff the Landshark animated shorts at a minimum in our future. I worry more about him debuting in movies or something like that. That's not geared towards him. I mean, I'd love to see it. I can't deny it, but I also think, you know, you have to be careful with Jeff. He doesn't fit in everything. Like, people were like, "Oh, will he be in the Captain Marvel movie?" And I was like, "Well, that movie does look like it's going to have some wacky elements, so maybe." But like, he hasn't been written into Captain Marvel, for example, other than like he's on a sweatshirt of hers at some point, you know what I mean? Like, because he doesn't really belong in that book. He didn't really belong in Black Widow either. We put a couple cameo jokes in there, like the little kid in it is wearing shark PJs, you know, and there's a Jeff stuffed animal in that kid's room. So like, you know, you find little ways to Easter egg it in, but yeah, you can't have Jeff like bounding through the very serious, very dark Black Widow comic. It just doesn't work. So Jeff doesn't belong everywhere. I think he absolutely would kill it in a Groot style shorts, which I don't know if you watched those, but I thought they were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were so clever. I mean, a couple of them were just home runs. I felt like in their cuteness and sort of world building and everything. It's just great.
I mean, Jeff just seems like I just kept getting the vibes, especially reading this issue. I'm just like, you know, he could be Marvel's Baby Yoda, you know.
I mean, I agree. I agree. Someone please cut me a giant check. Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. We really lucked out. You know, Daniele Di Nicola, he and I created him together in West Coast Avengers. I think nobody really could have predicted the path that happened, but I have to tip my hat especially to excuse me, I have the hiccups. I have to tip my hat especially to Gurihiru. I don't know if he takes off without them because they really latched onto him and they drew him in a poster that went everywhere that was for, I think it was for a Tokyo Comic-Con, like it was like an exhibition show, something like that. And that image was everywhere. And then they were drawing him in as little hidden Easter eggs into like a Heroes from Home thing and another thing. And so like you'd see Spider-Man folding his boxers and they had Jeff on them. And there's a Jeff refrigerator magnet and Jeff's on a coffee cup. And so they were like putting him in all of this stuff. And like, I think Marvel was very smart to go, these creators are incredible and they clearly are interested in this character. We know Kelly Thompson is interested in the character. Like, let's see what they can do. And then Jeff was definitely the breakout star of the Marvel Unlimited season 1. And I think he ran the table for his season 2 too. It's a great little strip. It, like, you know, I'm not trying to break my arm patting myself on the back, but I know how to get out of Gurihiro's way. Like, create a great concept, set up, you know, that it can be short and that can deliver basically like a joke or a punchline or an emotional kick or whatever in your X number of panels, and then just like let them be absolute magicians in sort of their expression and their body language and their design sense. Everything's so cute and fun. It's great. It's a great antidote to the world.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And I'm just waiting for the perfect product placement in the Marvels movie. Maybe Kamala has a stuffed Jeff in her room or something, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen little stuff like that. Like, there was everyone got really excited when the Kate Bishop show came out because there was a Jeff, or there was a shark, a land shark looking type of thing in her room and stuff. So it's been fun in that regard. I do think Kamala is certainly a place where I could see her, where it could be wacky enough to work. I do think Deadpool makes a lot of sense for him, but that makes me really worry about him too, because Deadpool's not afraid to kill things over there. I feel pretty confident that they don't want to just like murder a cash cow immediately before he's put out, but you never know. So,
but yeah, no, again, Jeff's the breakout star, it seems. So
he's really having a good run.
So I wanted to tell you congrats. So
thank you.
All right. So
I mean, Jeff's like 3 years old. He got nominated for an Eisner. Like, come on, Jeff.
Wow.
Yeah. For the digital, for our season 1 digital, I think he did. Yeah, it was great. So
I mean, it's just, the character's just pure. It's like, what's not to love about
the
character?
I do think it's you know, like anything that hits. I mean, it's always hard as a creator because you're creating all sorts of things, and so many of them do not hit. And when one hits, you're like, I often don't really get it, like, because not because you don't think it's worthy, but just because you think most of the things you make are worthy, like they could all do it. But when Jeff hit, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, the world is really dark and it's really bright and light. It's also that thing that they talk about more in Hollywood than comics, I think, but a 4-quadrant where it appeals literally to everyone. Like, you can grab every base with it. Or at least stereotypically every base, I guess. I don't like to put people into camps, but there you go. It sounded so much worse when I said it. I meant, you know, age groups and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I gotcha. No, yeah. I mean, it appeals to everybody. Jeff appeals to everybody. Just, you know, there's a shark, but he's a cute shark, and
yeah.
All right.
What's not to like?
Yes. All right. Let's get on to Captain Marvel, because yes, like I said, I have a bunch of questions from people all pertaining to this. And I think I originally reached out to you right before the announcement that issue 50 will be the last one, and I was bummed at that. But once again, another congratulations, because I was thinking about this. I'm like, these days in modern comics at Marvel, what solo character, if you're not Peter Parker, goes 50 issues?
Almost nobody.
I mean,
it's huge. I mean, Al did it on Immortal Hulk.
Yes.
And I think it was justified. And I also think, I mean, Hulk's a great big character. I mean, there's all this talk about he's not A-list, or he wasn't A-list until the movies or whatever. I don't know. I don't like to get in the weeds on all of that stuff. But yeah, I think, you know, if your name's not Peter Parker or Batman, it's pretty difficult to get a 50-issue run these days without a reboot, or relaunch, whatever, or a major creative team switch. We've had a really great run of artists, many of whom have come back, many of whom have done multiple arcs. Carmen Canero did the first 2 arcs with an alternate artist break in between them for a little tie-in thing. Lee Jarbet came back twice. Sergio Davila is doing this one with one issue assist from Javier Pina. And I love that they've all wanted to come back and like been excited about it and been into it. It makes you feel good. We've also gotten a lot of little hits from amazing people like David Lopez. And it feels great, and it feels great to have done all of that. But it was time.
Okay.
I just think there's only so many photon blasts you can write before you feel like you're getting diminishing returns, not just for
Okay.
yourself, but for the readers. And I didn't want that. I felt like once I didn't feel like I could really bring something interesting to it, it was time. And this felt right to get to 50, to have the last arc be an arc I was trying to get my hands on, the X-Men and the Brood, since I started.
Oh,
And it's one of those things where it's actually great that I couldn't get them until now, because it's the perfect closeout, because
yeah.
the Brood is so key to Carol's history and her development. And so putting her up against them again and like having the stakes and the cost be really high, it just felt like it worked. It made issue 50 really hard to write, because you want to write a celebratory thing, but you're coming right out of a brutal battle and torture and death. So it was I gave myself a little challenge there, but I think it worked out for the best.
But yeah, I mean, I've been loving this Brood story, and you get to play with two of your favorites, Rogue and Gambit.
Yes. And got my hands on Quantum for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, been enjoying that. And really, I haven't gotten to write much about Polaris. I had a lot of fun with her too. Laura is also a super fave of mine, so I had some fun with that. Although I have to say, I think though I'm really happy with the Rogue and Gambit stuff, and especially how it comes out in the last two issues, or how it sort of comes together in the last issue. I think Hazmat is one of my secret faves for this run. She's mostly had to be just that side character. It's hard to give someone their own sort of plot in a solo headlining book, because you just can't draw that much focus from your lead. You really got to stay centered. But it was really important. I think she's an incredible character, and I think she's underused. And I was like, this is probably my last chance to like give her something meaty and also make people pay attention to her. And I was really proud with how it comes out. She's still got some great stuff in 50 especially, but I was really happy with how it all came out, and connecting her and Rogue a little bit and everything.
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole run, there's so many good arcs. I mean, the Enchantress stuff was good. I love that. Carol trying to learn magic and the cost of that.
I have to say, when I'm looking back, I frequently end up rereading myself, not to like be like, wow, I'm so great, let's look at this, but like, because I'm looking especially on something like Carol, where you're referencing old stuff you've done, so you're like, oh, let me go look that up, and invariably you can't find exactly where it is, and you end up reading a little bit. And I have to say, the magic arc is one of my faves, as far as like looking back and what she was trying to do. And I think that there's a complicated thing there, that is, you want to talk about real stuff, but there's only so much you can talk about real stuff in a comic made by Marvel that is supposed to be suitable for a lot of ages. Like Carol still has to be a hero, and so you have to play a little fast and loose with some of that stuff. But I thought she raised, and we raised, and it brought Carol some real good conflict in that magic arc that I liked, and also set the stage. I think set the table with some juicy things people can do in the future if they so choose, like to go back to some of these ideas we raised. So, you hope that'll happen.
Oh yeah, you've done so much. I mean, there's so much. Oh, somebody live here. Yes, Ray. Hi, Kelly. Love your work. I'll get to your questions, Ray. Settle down. All right, that's it. All right, that could be a good jumping off point, because that's my friend Ray. He does a few podcasts of his own, but I just told him not too long, like half hour ago, I was talking to you, and he's like, can you ask her, because he said, tell her she is the goat for Captain Marvel, and he also does a Spider-Woman podcast, so he really wanted to really thank you for including Jess in the
I
series.
love Jess. I love Jess. Jess is a much more natural fit for me than Carol. Like
That
Jess
was
is
that was a question he had. He's like, "Would you write a Jessica Drew series?"
I would love to write a Jessica Drew series, but I'm not really doing anything with Marvel. I don't.
Mm.
There's nothing on the schedule that's not sort of little Jeff's shaped stuff I'm doing. So there's no real plans for that. I'm sorry to say. I do think it would be pretty hard to pick her up right now. I mean, I know that's what the fans want, but she is coming right off of her other book. So, sometimes it's hard to just pick that up and go in an interesting new direction. With a character like Jess, I feel like it shouldn't be, but it is a struggle, just like we said, if you're not Spider-Man or Batman. So, it's hard. It's hard to get a whole thing right off the ground. And I think if you don't have like an exciting new take, for example, the private detective Jess, I think we all really, I think most of us really enjoyed that. Those were some great stories. And then Carla doing something
Oh,
very
yeah.
different in her run, like it completely made sense. But if
Yeah.
I picked up Jess now, like what would that look like? I don't know. I'm not saying I couldn't figure it out if Marvel wanted me to do it, but they haven't asked, so I haven't come to them with a pitch. I do love Jessica though. I find her very funny and weird and bossy. I just love her. David Lopez just sent me some of the pages that he did for 50, and first of all, he's so good. It's so ridiculous. I turned it and showed it to my partner, and I'm like, "Look at this! Look at this body language! Look at how good it is!" I was just, and he's like, "It's amazing." He's just so good, and most of his stuff is Carol and Jess stuff. That's them, just sort of. I don't know. I just feel like it's their friendship. It's like how it works, and it's really beautiful, but it's also sort of messy, like a lot of those long friendships are. And I just get a real kick out of them.
Oh yeah, a lot of us love seeing her along with Carol. But oh, Ray, are you saying Ray, is there a Captain Marvel omnibus coming, or are you asking for one? Captain Marvel omnibus will be an instant buy.
There is. It's
Ooh.
it's scheduled. I think they moved it to May. I think it was supposed to be for winter or early spring, and then it got moved to May. And hopefully, if it does well, there will be 2 volumes, because that is,
Oh,
I think that one is like issue 1 through 26 of the run. Plus, I think they ended up adding the end, and maybe they put the Star miniseries in there. I think I remember something about
oh,
that, but I can't be sure. There are people on the internet who know far more about this than I do. I'm sorry to say, but I'm hopeful that they'll do a second volume. It would be really cool to have the full 50 issue run plus that Star series, like
yeah.
all housed in 2 books. That would be awesome.
What's this, Ray? Funny, weird, bossy. That's just in 3 words.
Like I said, I love her.
You got your take. Yes, that's the take.
Well, I flatter myself by saying my sense of humor is more like Jess's, which is better, whereas Carol's is more of like a dad jokes kind of sense of humor, where like she sort of thinks she's funny, and other people are like, you're all right.
Yeah, Carol has to be serious a little more often.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jess
yeah.
seems to be joking more often.
And I mean, not that Carol is unfunny. I certainly write jokes for her, and I don't think they're out of character, but I will also say that not everybody should be hilariously funny. Like that I don't think that's that interesting, right? Like not everybody should have the exact same voice and the
Oh
exact
no.
same sense of humor. And um so I really try to mix it up, and I think it's salt to taste, as your mileage may vary as to how much I nail it or not, but I'm always aiming for it.
All right. No, I have a couple questions here. Nobody left their. Some people didn't leave their names, but this question: what has been your favorite part about writing for Carol?
Hmm. I think I think it's been mostly like building out the supporting cast and like strengthening those connections and building some new ones. Like when we got to create new characters like her half sister and binary until I ruined that. Things like that. Things like that are really the stuff that give me the most joy. I do like I think I'm okay at writing action. I think I'm better at writing action in in street level books, I don't know what this is going to say about me that I say this. I think that it's harder for me to control what the artist is going to do if it's big power set piece stuff. And I don't mean that as an insult, and I don't mean it as like I want to control artists. I just mean it's more in the air to me as to how it will look or how it will turn out. And sometimes it blows my mind and I'm like, oh my God, that's way better than anything I imagined. And sometimes it's more like, oh, okay, well, we can make that work, but that wasn't really what I was thinking. You know what I mean? Whereas if you're writing action in Black Widow, especially if you're working with Elena and you've been doing it for a little while, like, these are martial arts moves. These are kicks and punches and gunfires. These aren't, hey, what does it look like when someone absorbs the sun, or something. So I just think it's just a slightly different action writing skill set. I think I'm a little better at one than the other, maybe just because I'm a control freak and one is a little easier. I don't know. But
I mean, I could see that. I mean, because people can interpret the science fiction-y stuff a couple different ways, but like in a street fight, it's basically like there's only so many ways. Punched.
Yeah, and so I think in the back half of Captain Marvel, we've played a lot more with her powers, like her pushing on her powers, trying new things, succeeding and failing at those things, and I think that has been really fun. But I do think that was driven as much by my interest in really making a mark on Carol and really like, sort of setting a standard and making her books important. But it was also just, I'm tired of just a photon blast and foom, 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 and then the fight's over. Like it's, you get to a point where you're tired of that. No matter how good of an artist you're working with, no matter what kind of a cool villain you put them up against, you want them to go somewhere else. And I think for most of my arcs, you lead towards something different, but you can't do something different in every issue. There's just not enough, especially with characters that you can't easily make broad sweeping changes with, because you have to respect all this other continuity, and you have to expect the story that you have to respect the fact that Carol's story doesn't end. Yes, I can tie up her stories for me, but someone's going to immediately pick her up. I mean, someone has already picked her up, it's not even over yet, and someone's already writing what the next adventure is. So I think you have to take all of that into consideration, and you hope it doesn't diminish your work. And I do think part of being good at this job is figuring out how to do that, right? Like any job, has little challenges, little fun challenges you discover on the way.
So here, I'm going to edit one of these questions here. All right. So is there anything you wish you would have had more time to get to, or have you said everything you want to say for Carol?
I think within the confines of what I'm able to do, I've done what I can. I'm very happy with this last arc and with how it ends. I wish we had, ironically, even though it was our longest ending arc ever, I wish I'd had 5 extra pages in 49. If I'd had 5 extra pages, I feel like it would have just been I could have done a little bit more that I wanted to do. I could have gone a little more emotional, and the very ending wouldn't have felt quite as rushed. I also, we knew we were getting some of the X-Men characters that are in Jerry's book.
Yeah.
Like some of them come in for 49, and they're almost completely wasted. I mean, they're not wasted as a plot point, but like, I think Cyclops, Forge, Magic, and maybe Iceman get dialogue, and the others don't even get to speak. There's just not room. It's so many characters, and there's just not enough room. And the thing I was saying before, it's not an X-Men book or an Avengers book. It's a Carol Danvers book, and she's going through hell, and she's got to be the focus. And of course she should be. So all of that has to drive toward her. But it does end up making me feel like some of them get a short shrift. Like I would have loved a couple more pages to flesh that out. But other than that, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with what we did. I mean, yes, there are small things I would go back and tweak or whatever, but within the bounds of what I'm allowed to do, I feel like we did a really great job. And I hope that a lot of the things we built will last. I mean, I think that's one of the funny challenges of a long run, which I've never gotten to experience until now, is that, with Carol, when I came in, one of the big things I wanted to do, in addition to strengthening sort of her home base Earth ties, was I wanted to really build up her rogues gallery,
Mhm.
because it's a problem for so many characters.
Yeah.
It's not limited to Carol by any means, but hers is particularly interesting because, Carol just used to be a strong character that flies around and punches shit. She's one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel universe now. So her against Deathbird, I mean, unless Deathbird brings a literal army of Shi'ar,
Mhm.
Carol can take care of that before breakfast. Like, that's not a problem. So, Mystique is a little different. I think Mystique is an incredibly underrated character who
Oh,
will stop at nothing and is very smart and very difficult. So even though she's incredibly outmatched power wise, I think her cleverness can maybe be a problem for Carol. But Mystique happened to be going through some really interesting things in X-Men at times when people were like, well, why don't you use Mystique? And I was like, listen, that bitch is trying to get her wife back, and I wouldn't get in the middle of that for all the all the
oh yeah,
all the
no.
marbles. Like, I'm dying to see her get Irene back and for this to work out, or what's going to happen, So X-Men were using her incredibly well, and I never would have wanted to mess with that. I'm also very invested in the Carol Rogue of it all. And
Mhm.
I think Mystique is an interesting complication and
Oh,
another writer should maybe do that now that I've done the things I've done, because I think it's interesting. But again, that's not a great villain for an arc for Carol
yeah.
unless you're really going there. So you want to create new things, but you also want to reinvent old things and bring them back in that have worked before, that you think might work. And then honestly, if you've got enough ramp, you want to bring some of those things you've created back to help solidify them as, hey, these aren't one hits. These are people who are going to keep coming for Carol. They're new problems for her. Has anyone seen the end of Vox Supreme? No way. I hope someone in the future will write a really great story with Vox Supreme where he comes back for Carol, because he is like a Lex Luthor in that way, where he is completely fixated on her and the specialness of her, a lot like the Brood are in their way. I mean, they don't go out of their way to get her, but they've always been hoping they'll grab her again, ever since what
Oh,
happened. So, so I think there's a really weird, delicate balance there. I think between Star and Vox Supreme and the potential of Ove, I think I put some really good things on the board. I also really think Nuclear Man is great. That's the thing. I would
mhm.
have loved to go back to Nuclear Man and deal with, they lost their ally Som in that story,
Yeah.
and they've never talked about it. They've never gone back for him. They've never got a rescue mission together. And that's on me. But I will say that part of that was driven by our first arc was one of our least successful. I mean, it started really high, but it didn't seem like it was the big hit on the run. Maybe that was just because people weren't around as much at the beginning and it took time for the book to catch on fire. But you're a creator. You only get to keep going as long as it's working. And
Yeah.
so the idea of doing another Nuclear Man based run, I like wasn't sure that was a great hit. Meanwhile, The Last Avenger with Vox Supreme was a huge monster hit for us. And so it made sense to go back to that well and sort of keep building that guy up. I'm sorry, I talked so much. I think I had too much caffeine.
People are here to hear you, not me. So I mean, no, that's fine. No, I was gonna say, I mean, you were talking about like like story points you didn't get back to. I think it's a problem in a good way that like you mentioned the supporting cast. I think that's a big part of why this run was so popular is the supporting cast. Like I've said before, I'm like, I think if the big two and the books of the big two at Marvel and DC have any problem now, I don't think they build up the supporting cast as much as they
Yeah.
used to in years past, and I don't think you did not have that problem. I mean,
Well, I will say I was really focused on that because I think to me, it was a big risk to sort of take Carol out of space because she's a cosmic character. She always wants to go up. That's in her nature. And I don't want to deny her that. But she's also human from Earth. I mean, she's now half human, but when we started, it like we hadn't really explored any of that yet. It was all stuff we were going to be getting to, but like she felt I love those space stories and her running Alpha Flight and the Kelly Sue arc where she was just dancing around planets and stuff. That was all so fun. But I did feel that like for 5 years she had been a space hero, more like the Guardians or something, where she really didn't have this connection to New York and everything. And I felt like some of her best connections, Jessica, Tony, all these things, they're all based here. And we've really sort of lost those threads a little bit. So I came in with the directive that I wanted her on Earth, that she could go to space for plenty of adventures and all the time, but I wanted her to base herself on Earth, and I wanted to reconnect her with some of these older friends of hers that we've all loved her with. And then I wanted to bring in Hazmat and L'Oreal and some things like that. And so yeah, I think it was just part of what I had my eyes on when I came in. And so it was sort of easy to do. But I do think I think you're right that people really responded to it. I would also say more than anything, the incredible emails and comments and notes I'm getting from people about the X-Men run, that's what they respond to more than anything, because a lot of them aren't Carol readers, so they're there for X-Men, and they're all saying these lovely things like, well, these guys seem like they're friends, like the way they interact together, even though they're in trouble and they're in danger, like there's sort of a crackling chemistry and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because that's what I want to see that's what I'm always looking for as a reader. And so yeah, I prioritize it. I do.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know how some of these books go without like a strong supporting cast, because again, it's like a certain arc, like it, like saying that people didn't respond to Carol in this arc. It's like, well, hey, Hazmat's here to pick up the slack, or Jess is
Yeah.
here, or
Yeah. It is definitely a weird sort of, it's almost like a video game cheat code, right? It's like if you can put those characters in there and like really do something with them, like give them nice moments of cool action or heroic moments or good jokes or whatever, you can pick off some of those people who maybe wouldn't be Carol readers, but are like, well, I show up for Hazmat, or I show up for Rhodey, or I show up for Jess. And I do think it's a little bit of a good cheat. I mean, I discovered that when I was first running my Kickstarters, they were for novels, but I was working with comics illustrators because I had one foot in comics. And so a lot of people that would come to, the Story Killer Kickstarter was because they're a fan of, this artist, and, they like Rebecca Isaacs and they see she's doing a piece for Story Killer or whatever. And so like, it's, it's just a way to help build up your audience, because I'm always looking for the people that don't think they're fans based on, preconceived ideas, which we all do, but we're often wrong. And you don't think you like Carol Danvers? You're wrong. She's great. Come over and read it and check it out. You'll see.
I know at least one or two people who weren't the biggest Carol fans, but they did read your run just because they liked the way you wrote Carol.
Thank you. That's nice. I actually know a lot of them because I know a lot of Rogue fans, and a lot of Rogue fans do not fucking like Carol Danvers.
Oh, yes.
But I like them both, and I think they like each other. I mean, now.
Oh, yeah. Now.
After the work I've done. And some other people did it too before me. I don't want to act like I invented the wheel there. Lots of people have been interested in this dynamic, and I think one of the great things about it is I've definitely pushed it into more friendly territory, but someone can come in and unstitch that pretty easily. Like all of it's pretty easily unstitchable. I tried to put a lot of fun things, set the table for other people to come, and I hope they'll pick up those things and use them. But if they don't, it's fine.
It's the nature of comics. They could be this week, they could be fighting next week,
Yep.
All right, let's get another question. Maya Lacey said, with the release of issue 48 this week and the new form that Carol takes on, is that something you knew you were going to do since Captain Marvel: The End, or were those dots you connected later?
I think certainly there was always the idea in my head that by writing Carol in that sort of more pure energy form in the end. Um, that people were going to be excited about that, and I sort of wanted to push toward that a little bit. Um, it's funny because a question I get a lot is why doesn't, or used to get a lot, is why doesn't Carol use her binary form? Can she not tap into the white hole or whatever? And this actually goes back to the thing I was saying about you can't really completely control your artist, because I would literally write into a script, goes binary, like she's super powered up, she goes binary. But the way an artist interprets that, they're all different. And so, and then the way the reader interprets what the artist does is different. And so if you don't literally write out that you're in the binary form, I think it gets confusing for people, and they're like, well, is she doing that or is she just fiery? I don't know. And I'm like, I don't really know either. Like, what does it all mean? But I do think that I don't think this will surprise anyone, and I don't think it's a swing on Marvel, so I'll say it. I did want to leave her in that energy form.
Oh.
It at the end of 49 and into 50. But that's a big ask. That's asking whoever's coming next to inherit your problem, or worse, to write it off, which is not what you want to see done with something you've done. And so I realized pretty early on when I was thinking that I had to back off that, because that wasn't going to be a fair way, even though I thought fans would dig it. It wasn't going to be a fair way to leave the character. And it was also possibly not even going to get approved, probably not going to get approved by Marvel, if only because of the movie.
Yeah.
And they don't want the movie coming out and her being like not even looking like herself, like, or the way people perceive herself. They don't want that market confusion. Again, nobody said that to me. I just know enough from working in the industry that that's probably a thing that was going to happen if I tried to push for it. So I let it go. And I did, basically, we lean towards it. I think, as you could see at the end of 48, that it's sort of that first push in that direction that maybe she could end up in that form in the future. And then maybe people will play with it or not. We'll see.
And the last question I had from the people is we talked about this a little. I don't know if it's going to be the magic one, but what was your favorite arc or individual issue to write for this run?
I think of the Brood arc is going to be my favorite.
Ooh.
And I mean, are my favorite issues the little ones? God, I can't believe I think I'm going to say this. Oh. I really loved issue 1, but there's always a lot of heavy lifting and too much exposition that I don't like doing in issue 1. So I'm going to strike that off the list. The David Lopez date issue where she hooks up with Doctor Strange. I loved that issue. There's also a binary issue that Julius, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Ota did with Carol, Monica, and Binary sort of on the road. Yeah. I loved that one. That's a standalone. I did love writing that Thor fight issue of The Last Avenger. If the art turns out as beautiful as it looks so far, I think maybe 50 will be my favorite. And it will also be very low on fighting. There's a formula to writing superhero comics. Maybe unsaid, but you pick it up pretty quickly. There just has to be X amount of fighting, X amount of punching or buildings falling down or something per issue. And I just said I don't care for issue 50. There's some action in it, of course there is, but I just realized I didn't think that was what people wanted from me. Like the last 30 pages of a 50 issue run, do you really want a fight that really doesn't mean anything, that has just been wedged in here, but that's taking up space for like emotional revelations or great character moments of people sort of connecting or not connecting or whatever. So I think Javier Pina and David Lopez are doing absolutely incredible work. And I love that issue so much. So if it turns out the way I think it will, I think that'll be my favorite issue, and the Brood will be my favorite arc, which is a crazy thing to say when you say you're leaving the book because it's time. It makes it seem like I should have kept going, but no, it was time. It was time, and I hope it's the right send off. I hope we did it right. You know.
Well, I'm glad it's not going to be a complete fight scene in 50 because it's like I mean that's going to be your at least for now your final word on Carol. So it's like
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
cap off everything, and I'm sure you're going to
Yeah.
have something to say about the other characters as well. So you said it's oversized, right? It's not like a regular
It
size issue.
is. It's not. It's Marvel's PR was bad on that. I don't know if they just misunderstood, but they were telling everyone it was double sized, but it's not. It's oversized.
Okay.
So they put it in their press release on the Marvel site, and then every single site picked it up double sized. And I was trying to correct people at first, and then I just gave up. But it's 30 pages.
Okay.
It's about 20 pages of Javier Pina and 10 of David Lopez, although that balance might shift a little bit. So, but that was how we broke it down. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, I can't wait to read it, but I'm going to be sad because it's going to be the last one. So
I think you guys will love it. And I did get a Jeff Landshark mention in there finally. So
nice.
yeah, a cameo. I hope. I mean, maybe the artist won't draw it, but I literally wrote it into the script and gave us dialogue around it. So if Javi tries to write him out, I'll have to go to his house or something and be like, "What the hell?"
Oh, and so the one question was there one character you didn't use that you wanted to write? Would that have been Mystique, or was there anyone else you would have wanted to use and didn't get the chance? Or
I do think a Mystique arc would have been really cool if she had been in a different place and sort of it had made sense. But honestly, I think that would have been really dark. Maybe too dark for a regular Carol book. Like I think the things Mystique would have to do to be able to fight Carol Danvers are pretty bad.
yeah,
I think
not
they're
worth
pretty
it.
dark and
Yeah.
serious. I think that I really wanted to use Minerva more, and then that sort of
Mm,
didn't work out. I did want to bring Star back in, but she seemed like she, more than any of the other villain characters, people latched onto. And so she
yeah.
sort of, even though I would have liked to explore more stuff with Carol and Star, she seemed solid enough that there's no doubt that she's a Carol Danvers nemesis now, like
Yeah.
I have no doubt people will pick her up down the line.
Oh yeah, she kind of got scooped up. It almost seemed like she got kind of scooped up and taken away from you for a while.
Well, I mean, you don't want to keep going to that hoop, especially when,
Yeah.
Star, I think, is an incredible character, and I think she's a great foil for Carol, but she also looks a lot like her and everything,
Yeah.
and that works for that story, but that's not necessarily the most interesting thing that you want to see over and over. I will say, I'd say between us, but this is a live podcast, so between all of us, I did do a Captain Marvel sort of event pitch at Marvel's request, and that certainly involves Star, as I'm sure you can imagine. She has the Reality Stone. There's a lot of things that can be done with that work for an event pitch. It's definitely not going to happen, or if it does, I won't be writing it. But it's it was really fun to play with that with Star, and that did make me wish that I'd had time to come back and do another story with Star and Carol. So she would maybe be my answer, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, she's a good character, which, like I said, you could tell because other writers were just like, "Oh, hey, I want to use Star, I want to use Star." So
it also helped that, some of the ways about how Star came about, because initially the Falling Star arc, I designed that was supposed to be arc 1 of our Carol book, and people got really excited about the apocalyptic thing, and so they wanted to use that first. And listen, no shade, I was excited about it too. I love like a weird dystopian, let's give everybody weird costumes. I'm super into that. I wouldn't have pitched it if I didn't want to do it, but I was concerned that it was weird to have her not in her usual look when the movie was coming out. And more, I was concerned Marvel was going to regret that choice or like whatever. And obviously everything worked out fine, but it did end up benefiting us in a weird way because it allowed us to put Ripley in that first arc and then it made us look really smart when she turned out to be Star later.
Hmm.
And then it made us look really, really smart because she had been on the board. I think it's a good lesson for me in the more you do this stuff in advance. I get nervous and I stop wanting to commit. I'm working on a pitch right now that I'm so excited about, and every day I delay probably makes it worse chances for me that it gets approved. But it's really big and really exciting, and it's very hard to commit to choice. Like, you're like, well, if I commit to that thing for that character, that is where we're going. And I get gun shy about committing to things. Sometimes I get cold feet. But like Star was a really good example of, if you can get that shit figured out earlier, you can plan for it. And then if you're lucky enough to get more than 5 or 6 issues of whatever you're doing, you can look very clever and like you've seeded the ground well for some things you're going to develop. And that happened sort of on accident for us with Star. Like, we knew the Reality Stone was going to be a thing. And so when we were designing her costume, we were like, she's pretending to be a hero, so it should be white based, but like, let's do red, because red is both a little villainy, maybe it can go villainy very easily, and then it's a tie to the Reality Stone, so it'll make sense. It'll make more sense when it all comes together. So we had a lot of little advantages with Star that I think helped. But bottom line, I hate to say it, I think a lot of it's about Carmen Canero designing a great looking character in a fantastic costume. It's just like, I mean, why is Spider-Gwen so popular? I mean, people love that character, but what started it? The
The
costume.
Yeah, because wasn't it just like wasn't she
It
just like
was,
a variant
yeah.
cover first or
Well,
something?
I
And
think that was Gwenpool. I mean, Gwenpool's another
oh
example.
yeah, yeah.
Incredible character design that like launched the character just for, I think it was Bocello did some variant, and it was Gwenpool, and people flipped the hell out. And then, but Spider-Gwen, one of the best costumes we've seen in a decade. It was incredible, and she's a superstar. I am not even a super Spider-Gwen fan, and I'm looking at a statue right now, and it's one of the coolest looking statues I've got, because the costume, and
Oh
a
yeah,
spider statue is always pretty good because they're so bendy and
yeah.
acrobatic and whatever. But so it's comics. It's a visual medium. If you can nail some of those things, you can really capture hearts and minds. And I think that's what happened with Star.
Oh yeah. But the back to the Star thing, is it like, do you overthink it more with like character you create, or rather than like, oh, it's like Carol, you want to do a good job with Carol, but you're like, Carol's been around for decades, Carol will survive any mistake I make. But like, are you worried about your own character that you created, where you're just like, oh no, if I do this, that's going to be in the canon forever?
um I think it's very hard to let go of a character that you create. For me, I get very
Mhm.
attached. um so it's hard to let go and know that you don't own that, and you're not in control of where it's going to go and what's going to happen. And I feel that more. I feel the pinch of that more on some characters than others. But I don't know that it's actually, I think it's a different emotion. I think it's a different feeling than worrying about or not worrying about Carol Danvers, because I do worry about Carol Danvers a lot, because that is a character that is super divisive. And I saw my job when I came on as telling really incredible, great stories with her, reminding people like what an incredible hero she was. But I felt we did have to walk a really weird line where we sort of brought back people that are not Carol haters, but that started to not like the character because of some of the stories she was in. And, feeling like she's a cop in a world where we're not really loving cops so much lately.
Mhm.
Authority figure is more charged than it's ever been, maybe. And so I felt like I really had to walk softly on some stuff, but still, you know, you, you can't be tepid. Nobody's excited by tepid. Nobody's excited by not making strong choices. So, but it's a really fine needle to thread to me. I feel like I've just layered on cliches and metaphors here, but like we couldn't really cut her hair. I mean, not that someone would have told me not to do it. Not that Sarah would have said we can't do it, but I'm sure if I'd asked Sarah, she would have been like, "Are you sure?" Because it's a whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to hear about it. And so, like, when you think about how ridiculous that is, what do you mean I can't cut this character's hair because it sends a whole message and it's a whole nightmare, you know? Um, so I think Carol was more challenging than almost any character I've ever brought on. And then to make that even worse, I inherited her at a great moment, but when she was about to be $1 billion character. So there was a lot of attention on it and everything, which can be great, but is also a little terrifying.
Yeah. And again, like, I mean, you mentioned about bringing her back to Earth. Like, I know with any cosmic character, I'm just like, I kind of like a balance. It's like, okay, yeah, space stuff is cool, but I also like when they come back to Earth and you have
Yeah.
to punch a supervillain in the face every so often.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I kind of get bored. Maybe it's just my attention span, but I'm like, okay, we're still in space year 3. Okay, well, but yeah,
Well, I just
I like the
think
balance. And again, it's like the work life balance. Everyone can relate to that.
Well, I do think that I do think a thing that Kelly Sue struggled with a little bit in her second run with the gorgeous David Lopez art. And again, it's not a criticism from me.
Oh,
It's
no.
just a writer problem that you inherit, which is that she was sort of doing like a really cool space road trip, right? Where, I mean, not to make it sound like it doesn't have stakes, it had tons of stakes, but like she was traveling from planet to planet and she had some people with her that became supporting cast characters as she
Yeah.
went. But like, I feel like because we live in a superhero comics world of so many relaunches, and with every relaunch and creative team, the board seems to get swept clear and then people bring in all their own ideas about what they want to do. And that's not a criticism. I do it too.
Yeah.
We all do it. It's the job. It's part of how you make it work. But as a fan, it can get tiring. You're like, wait, I just attached to all these, Alphavite characters, for example, for
Yeah.
Carol Danvers. And then you're like, and now she's going back to Earth. And I'm like, sorry. Like, you know what I mean? So I do
Yeah.
think that the Kelly Sue DeConnick story, and I actually think I prefer her second volume to her first, although there's a lot of good stuff I love in
Oh, yeah.
the first one before they relaunched it. But when they relaunched it and she moved it more into space, I just love some of those stories so much, but she really gave herself a challenge there where because the character is moving all the time and doesn't really have that standard base, it feels a little bit like a relaunch every time where you're like, wait, I'm meeting all new characters again. And
Mhm.
that's a challenge. That's a really hard challenge. And I'm not Kelly Sue DeConnick. I didn't want to challenge myself that much. I wanted to be like, her people are Tony, Jessica, Rhodey, and Hazmat. That's the base. We're going to add some people in it. People will shuffle in and out as we can, particularly L'Oreal, some She-Hulk, some Monica, a tiny bit of Jessica Jones. I wish I could have used Jessica more. But so I Wanda we got to use, like, but so I wanted to keep it more core. I see people complain sometimes that we don't use enough humans, and I think it's for very obvious practical reasons. Like, it's harder to get invested to me in if we had wanted a young female character that was in Carol's life in some capacity. If it's an unpowered character, that character just has incredible limitations in the Marvel universe. Whereas if I can use Hazmat
Oh, yeah.
and maybe give her some love and like put some shine on her, other writers maybe remember about her, and then she's got a future. And so I tend to lean towards setting up new heroes or leaning into the existing heroes rather than using sort of a lot of humans who don't have powers. But maybe that's a mistake. I mean, it's if Carol had a boyfriend who wasn't Rhodey, I probably could have used him more. Not that anyone was telling me I can't use Rhodey, but it's not a Carol and Rhodey book. It's a Carol Danvers book. So Rhodey immediately gets short shrift in anything, and he even more so than Jess, he's supposed to be a partner. So giving him short shrift when he's his own hero in his own right, it feels a little weird.
Well, that's just the
So
logistics, right? Because it's like, oh,
yeah,
he might be over here. He might have his own book. He might be over in Tony
yeah,
Stark's
yeah.
book at any given point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky.
Oh,
So
do you,
you superhero comics, you'd think it's easy, but there's a lot of little landmines.
did you watch the trailer for the Marvels movie? There's a new female accuser, and does that look like she could be Carol's sister?
Well, it's funny because some people sent me that with the same thought,
Yeah.
but I wasn't looking at the woman who was holding
Mm,
the universal weapon. I mean, it's definitely the universal weapon,
yeah.
but I was like, there's no way that's L'Oreal. I just don't. I just think she's too big a character for them to cast someone who like looks nothing like her and isn't even
Yeah.
blue. So I was really looking at there's a female accuser behind her that doesn't have the
Mm,
universal weapon that I don't know. I hope that's not L'Oreal because if they ever bring L'Oreal into the movies, I hope they cast someone huge like not just a known actress, but literally someone large, like, Gwendolyn Christie, 6'2" or whatever, because I just want to see that size. I mean, I know they can do a fair amount of cheating, um, but I did get a little thrill of like, wait, that's a blue Cree female accuser standing right there. Like, are we nodding at it or are we suggesting we're
well,
gonna
maybe
do it? Or yeah,
they usually seem like they keep something up their sleeves,
yeah,
but
yeah,
so it might be like, oh no, 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 that's my body
yeah,
double. No, I'm the real
yeah.
power here. Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's exciting, and I thought the trailer looked really fun. I mean, I have to say, I really liked the Ms. Marvel show. I thought it was
Yes.
incredibly creative. I thought it was really emotional. Um, I thought the changes they made, I know not everybody loves them, but I think they make sense for what they're trying to do, and you have to think of it as a larger thing,
Mhm.
and how it all connects together. I also thought that Monica was one of the great secret weapons of WandaVision,
Oh yeah.
especially in those last couple issues. I'm shocked they didn't call her Spectrum because the way her power was in WandaVision, it totally seemed like the right name. Like, because she was
Yeah.
like seeing that's, anyway, whatever. They're both fine names. It's fine. Um, I, I, I have to say, I'm a huge Monica fan,
Oh yeah.
but
Come here.
I'm really, I mean, I like her in all her incarnations. She's a great character, but my heart really lies with the next wave version of Monica,
Mm,
which is a little bit darker. And so when she first appeared in Captain Marvel as a little kid, I was like, well, I know this is going to like move forward in time. I was like, God, I would give anything for Monica, like something happens to Monica and she gets like swept into another dimension or something when she's older, not as a
yeah.
child. I'm not a
Yeah.
monster, but she gets swept into another dimension and like maybe that's how she meets those crazy next wave characters like Elsa Bloodstone and whatever. And like maybe sometime in the future, she just steps out of a portal fully grown, looking like Monica Rambeau, and she's got the next wave people with her, and they're like, hey, we got to save the world because everything bad is coming through this hole behind us or whatever. Like, I just wanted some wacky, crazy shit. And so there was a little bit of disappointment for me when I realized with WandaVision that we were getting like a more normal superhero Monica.
Mhm.
But I've loved it. I've loved it. Like, I think you gotta sometimes step back, and fans, we always think we know what we want, right? Like, we're aching for it. Oh, I want this, I want this. But we don't really know what we want. I don't know. I think a good writer shows you what you need instead of what you want, right?
Mhm.
And so I feel like I wanted Next Wave Monica, but the world needs Photon Monica in the Marvels, and I'm really excited for it. Like, I think that actress is amazing. I can't believe I really haven't seen her in anything since Mad Men, I think, which is
Mhm.
crazy because she was crazy talented in that, and she's super great in this, and so I'm excited.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Monica fan too. So if they came to you with to ask you for a Monica book, you would do it.
Well, I haven't read the Ewing book, so I
No.
don't know what the goal is with Monica, but I love Monica. If they needed someone to write Monica, sure, of course, she's great. But that said, am I the right choice for Monica? Like, just because I love Monica, like, I mean, you've got Eve Ewing writing it, like that seems like a really good choice for Monica, right?
Yeah, but I think it's
I
only a
mean,
limited series, so it's
yeah,
yeah.
that's always hard.
I
I
know.
I do think maybe I don't know. You hope that you're a good enough writer and that you don't show biases towards certain characters in your work.
Mhm.
So I would hope a lot of people would be on board with me writing a Monica book, but I could understand people being skeptical after I did 50 issues of Carol, you know.
I was gonna say, you're like, oh, am I the person? You got a character who isn't Peter Parker or Bruce Banner to 50 issues in the modern age. I think that says a lot about your talent. So,
Oh, thank you. I had a lot of people helping me.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but again, I always say it's always you can always tell a good run because the right balance is there, the writing and the art. Because
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if one's lacking more than the other, then it's kind of
Yeah. I do think that you're onto something there in the sense that, you know, artists, really great artists, they like to do number ones. Because they like to build a world and they like to launch
Mhm.
a thing and they like to design the costumes and do all, they like to build that just like we do, just like writers, I think. And so I think it's probably harder to get someone to come on and do issues 31 through 37 of
Mhm.
Captain Marvel. And we really didn't have a problem. We had really, really great
Oh
people,
yeah.
and always we had great options. Some of that is down to Sarah Brunstad being both a great editor and also like really getting what I respond to. Like she was pretty great. You know, I think Corey Smith was someone that came on. He did our Empire arc. So I only got 4 issues with him because it was that Empire tie-in. And she had to convince me a little bit on him just because, you know, sometimes when you see the sample pages, you're like, yeah, I can see it, but I don't know if it's perfectly right, you know, or whatever. And I'm a pain in the ass about that kind of thing. And it was the hardest Sarah's ever pushed me to be like, I really think you should look at this again. I think you're wrong to be skeptical. I think he's going to be amazing. And I think it was when he just started penciling, like, or maybe he just sent layouts, but it was like the first couple pages of the first issue. And I emailed Sarah and I was like, you're right. He's incredible. Like I loved what he did. It was such a good fit for that arc. He really nailed it. A really complicated arc. He did that incredible L'Oreal design. Um, and he was a great fit with Tamra. Tamra was doing colors at that time, and he was also a complete delight to work with, which is always a lovely surprise and super on time, way more on time than me. So, you know, sometimes you have to trust the people you're working with because they know best. He was a slam dunk, and I'd work with him anytime. And I'm regretful that I even had any doubts, you know, that I like couldn't quite see it because it's obvious now when I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a run where I was like, "Oh, this artist sub being, not up to the other artists." And again, it's like if the writing and the art isn't there, you're not getting the 50 in this
Yeah.
day and age.
Yeah. I think that's very true.
All right, I'll let you go because I'm sure you have a bunch of project. You always have a bunch of stuff in the works. But again, tell people about your creator-owned book, and once we jump off, email me the info, email me a link. I'll put it in all the show notes, and
Okay. Okay,
if you're up
sure.
for it, maybe when it comes out, I'll get it. We can discuss it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Black Cloak is on issue 4 right now. I'd be
Okay.
happy to send you those issues if you don't have them,
Okay.
or to talk to you about it anytime. The Cull, so Black Cloak 6, I think, wraps up in it's either June or July, and then we'll be doing a new arc, I believe, in the fall, starting up a new arc. The Cull is the other creator-owned book. It's going to start in August. And if you want to subscribe to my Substack, it's a little quiet right now, but there will be lots of updates coming very soon this spring. We're going to sort of revamp some things. But that's the best place to get notes on everything I'm doing. And that's 1979 semifinalist.substack.com. And yeah, I think I've got some really big announcements coming. I think one of them will be this month, but you know, I gotta get organized with the companies and, you know, all that good stuff. But yeah, it's going to be like a weird exciting year. It's a sort of weird transitional year for me, but I'm really enjoying it.
But yeah, I mean, I will track down Black Cloak. We need to talk that, and we will talk the Cull if you're up for it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, like I said, the door is always open for you. And thank you once again. I mean, you keep coming back, so
Yeah,
if I
thanks for
haven't
having me.
scared you off yet, thank you so much. And again, I know 49 and 50 aren't out yet, but is there anything else you want to say on Captain Marvel?
Thanks for supporting it, guys. Buy the omnibus.
Yes.
So we get part 2.
Yes. All right, everyone.
All right,
Yes.
guys. Bye.
Thank you, Kelly.